What's going on, YouTube? I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. This is the video of my attempt at my first nuzlocke ever. It's a hardcore nuzlocke of Pokemon Fire Red using only water-type Pokemon. The rules are as follows: no items except for held items in battle. I can only catch the first water-type Pokemon of each area. I have to play on set mode, and no leveling past the next gym leader's ace Pokemon. So if the ace is level 14, I can't level up past 14 until the start of that gym battle. Thankfully, with Gen 1, there were a lot of water-type Pokemon introduced, meaning we have a lot of viable encounters. Excluding version-specific Pokemon, these are all the viable encounters we have for this game. As you can see, there are some pretty heavy hitters like Gyarados. Before I forget, I also wanted to mention that I tried this run quite a few times before I actually thought about making it into a video, so the attempt you're about to see is the result of a lot of patience and just learning from mistakes. We ended up picking Squirrel, and then our least favorite rival starts challenging us to a battle. He sends out Bulbasaur, and of course I send out Sushi. Oak then starts rambling on about things that I think pretty much everyone at this point already knows, unless you're new to the game. The battle goes about as you would expect. We both trade tackles. Oak again interjects without anyone asking him. And boy, do I wish there was an option to skip tutorials in these games, if you already know. We get hit by a crit, but then we take the lead and end up winning. Like I said, nothing interesting happens here. Alright everyone, today's Thursday, which means Sushi gets 5 minutes unsupervised with a loaded firearm in a public place. I wonder what he's gonna do. Oh shit, run, hide. Miraculously, the old guy Sushi shot survives, and as a sign of good faith, he shows us how to use our balls. Next up is Viridian Forest. Honestly, I was a little worried since I know there are Pikachus that can appear in the wild here, but honestly, no trainer here actually has a Pikachu, so as long as you have antidotes for after the fight to deal with poisons and you have potions to heal up after fights, really it's not a big deal and nothing really interesting happens here. So let's skip to Brock, shall we? Before taking on Brock, we first have to deal with some guy who doesn't understand that light years are units of distance and not units of time. I'm clearly not 10,000 light years away from challenging Brock, I'm only a few feet, so I mean, honestly, his battling skills are no better, so we just sort of sprinkle him with water and that's that. Next we get to Brock, and as you might have noticed, we're actually a little under-leveled for him. That's because after him is a very long part with a lot of mandatory trainers, and I don't want to risk accidentally going over the level cap. It's pretty easy, we just sprinkle his Geodude with some bubbles, we learn Water Gun, and honestly, it's exactly as easy as you would have expected. Onyx has not great defense, so he goes down in one Water Gun. Easy peasy. Up next is the sort of tricky part, because it has a lot of mandatory trainer battles. I skip who I can, but ultimately I do need to battle them, and I do get experience. It's not bad, as long as I don't go over the level cap, it's fine. Sushi then evolves into Wartortle, giving us a nice power boost. And finally, we're able to add our second Pokemon to the party, using what's left of our money after buying potions to use outside of battles. It's a Magikarp, who we nicknamed Tsunami. It's Lonely Nature, which increases its attack, which is really nice for a future Gyarados. Next, we start the absolutely tedious process of switch training Magikarp up to at least level 15, which is when he gets Tackle. Honestly, this is probably one of the most annoying things I had to do, but it is what it is. It's especially annoying doing it with the threat of a level cap. Mount Moon goes pretty easily, nothing really significant happens. We beat up this, I don't know, scientist guy, I guess? Super nerd is what it says, whatever. Then we take the Helix fossil, while this non-believer takes the Dome fossil. After that comes Misty, the water-type gym leader. Now, I'm a little worried about Misty just because she's a little bit of a harder early game boss, but honestly, we have a Gyarados and a Wartortle, both of whom that know Bite, so really it's not that bad. Staryu stalls a little bit until he gets a lucky confusion on us with Water Pulse, but Gyarados is able to pull through in the end, and we do knock out the Staryu. I end up getting a little worried, so I think about switching into Sushi, but I decided to stay with Gyarados. Luckily, we hit through Confusion twice to knock out Staryu. In comes Starmie, who's pretty fast and has a high special attack stat. 2 Swifts do good damage to us. I see the potion coming, so we go for another bite, and then we swap into Sushi. Thankfully, we don't get confused from that. She gets a crit Swift, but we're able to take it down with another bite. Second gym badge acquired. Up next is the reason why I spent so much time getting a Gyarados this early in the game. Thanks to Gyarados' flying type, he resists Ivysaur's, or Bulbasaur in this case, grass type attacks. We start off with Gyarados, we get a crit bite. Honestly, Pidgeotto is pretty easy to take down. In comes Rattata, and we swap to Sushi, who is able to knock it out with a Water Pulse. So far, so good. The crit probably didn't matter either. In comes Bulbasaur, and I know we can probably tank at least one Vine Whip, but we get put to sleep, and we switch into Sushi. We get the Intimidate, which makes things a little bit easier, but again, it's not that big a deal. We do get put to sleep, which is a little annoying, but honestly, Vine Whip isn't doing much thanks to the Intimidate and the Resistance, so really it's just stalling for time at this point. In comes Abra, who doesn't know any attack except for Tackle, so we one-shot it. Pretty easy. Up next is another area where I need to be careful. There are also a lot of mandatory trainer battles, and I need to make sure we don't surpass the level cap, which is only 2 levels higher than we currently are. 3 in Gyarados' case, but the level cap is now level 24 for Lieutenant Surge. We then meet the guy who created the Pokemon storage system, and he's apparently a furry. But we turn him back into a human, and as thank you, he gives us a cruise ticket, I guess? I mean, that's cool. Up next is the next rival battle. It's not much different than the first one, except it's a little more stressful given the fact that we're so close to the level cap. Basically, it goes almost the exact same way as before. We lead with Gyarados, he leads with Pidgeotto. We make short work of the Pidgeotto thanks to Gyarados. And honestly, nothing really interesting happens here, but we're gonna watch it regardless. Raticate comes in next. Now this Raticate could be an issue because it knows Hyper Fang, but it goes for Tail Whip, we lower defense. Hyper Fang does decent damage, but luckily we get the Confusion. He actually withdraws him and sends in Ivysaur. We get a clutch crit, and then a bite, and then a flinch, and then Sleep Powder. But it's alright, we just swap into Tsunami, and we destroy Ivysaur. Really, nothing's different with this battle, as opposed to the last rival battle. The main thing is that he has a Kadabra and Eradicate, but again, both go down really easily. Kadabra even misses a Disable, so it's pretty easy. Then we are subjected to what is quite possibly the weirdest interaction of any Pokemon game, where we rub this captain's back, rub, and then as thank you, he cuts us. Gee, how rude. Up next is the fight that I was the most concerned about for the early game, but thankfully, we have a secret weapon to deal with him. We ended up getting the TM for Secret Power that we taught to Gyarados. Now, it's a physical attack, meaning it benefits from Gyarados' high physical attack stat, but it somehow doesn't make direct contact with the target, so we don't need to worry about things like static. As you can see, he one-shots both Voltorb and Pikachu, and then in comes Raichu. Now, we can live at least one Shockwave, but only one Shockwave. Raichu goes for Double Team, and we hit a Secret Power, and we get a clutch crit. So, honestly, really nothing to be worried about there. We then get the TM for a turn from a girl whose Pokemon presumably died. Well, that's depressing. Up next, we get our next encounter, Eevee, which we name Aqua. We then shove a Water Stone down his throat and force it to evolve into Vaporeon. Now, Vaporeon is often overlooked as far as water types go, but honestly, she's a pretty underrated special attacker, and will prove to be very useful in this run. Up next is the Grass-type gym leader, Erica. You might be thinking this is bad, but let's be honest, she has a really bad AI, and basically, while it could be bad for us type-wise, nothing she does in this battle really affects us too badly. I mean, we're already at her second Pokemon, and all it does is miss a Poison Powder, so I mean, it could be a lot worse. Misty was honestly a lot harder. Third up is Vileplume, who survives a return and misses a Stun Spore, then survives a second return, but then gets healed. But then Gyarados uses return a second time, or a third time, and then knocks it out. Pretty easy. Up next is the Rocket Hideout under the game corner. Honestly, it's pretty easy. Tsunami and Wartortle basically drown everyone, as well as this poor Raticate, so I mean, really nothing interesting happens here. Let's skip to Giovanni. Next up is the battle against Giovanni, you know, if you could call it that. We basically drown his entire team. Basically, our entire team is strong against all of his Pokemon, so Sushi literally one-shots 2 out of 3 of his Pokemon, and then in comes Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan does good damage with Mega Punch, and then can actually tank a critical hit Ice Beam pretty well, so we end up going into Tsunami for the Intimidate. Tsunami goes for return, and it does good damage, and then another return is able to knock it out. Pretty easy. And it was at this point I realized I never fought the rival when I should have, so here we are to beat him up again. He's pretty annoyed that he, can't kill our Pokemon? Jesus. Pidgeot surprisingly tanks an Ice Beam and then goes down to one more hit. Next up is Ivysaur, who goes down to a single crit Ice Beam. So far so good, Blue. Really proud of you. We decided to teach Protect, but I'm not really sure how much I'm going to be using it, but it could come in handy. Rival then sends in Gyarados, and obviously we just stay with Sushi, who hits a pretty good Ice Beam for another crit. He's really on it with the crits today. Gyarados goes down to another bite, and that's his third Pokemon. Growlithe comes in, and can you guess what happened? Yeah, I have to swap to Tsunami. You see, I accidentally deleted the only water move I had, so I don't have any water-type moves at the moment. Because I have 2 Brain Cells, and they are both fighting for second place, chat. Last up is Kadabra. We're burned, but it doesn't matter. We still knock out the Kadabra. We get to GlitchxCity, and thank God we now get a Fishing Rod. Hey, that rhymed. Basically, this means that we are able to get a lot more encounters, thankfully. First up, we catch a Horsey, and I've never used Horsey, Seadra, or Kingdra, so I'm pretty excited to give him a try. We nickname him Azul, cause, you know, he's blue. Next, Sushi evolves into Blastoise, one of my favorite Gen 1 Pokemon, and a much-needed power boost for the run. Then, we catch a Krabby. Again, I've never really used Kingler or Krabby all that much, so I'm pretty excited. I know Kingler can be pretty good, and I feel like it's just always nice to have the extra coverage. I then appropriately name him Mr. Krabs. I know, I am the CEO of original nicknames, you guys. You guys can admit it, it's all good. Next up is Poliwag, and guess what? That's right, I have actually never used any of the Poliwag line except for Politoed in competitive, so I'm pretty excited. I know Poliwrath will be very useful when we fight Lorelei, so it is what it is. Next, Blue actually evolves. Yeah, look at him now. Look at him. Next up is Koga. Koga really isn't that hard, but I did have to go into him a little underleveled because him and Sabrina both share the same level cap, and before we fight Sabrina, we also have to go through the Slilfco, so I need to be really careful that I don't get too much experience. Thankfully, Sushi is a beast and one-shots Weezing. Then we miss a dig on Muck twice, because the only thing Gen 1 AI know how to do is spam double team. We one-shot the next Coughing with another Surf, and then in comes Weezing, his ace Pokemon. We use Surf, which hits him to half, and can you guess what happens next? Yep, a second Surf takes him down. Next Gym Badge, easily up next we have the Silphco rival fight. I'm not all that worried about it, but this is the first fight where he has a Venusaur and Pidgeot, so it could be a little hard. Who am I kidding? It's not going to be that hard. We 2-shot with Ice Beam, and that's it for Pidgeot. In comes Venusaur, and I know we can tank 1 Razor Leaf, so we stay in with Ice Beam. We fall asleep, so we swap to Tsunami, who lowers his attack with Intimidate, and honestly, it's just the same thing as the last fight. We knock it out with Return. He survives on a Sliver, but 1 more Secret Power is enough to knock him out. Then comes in Gyarados, and he lowers our attack, but really, let's be honest, our Gyarados is so much better than his. I will not be taking any other comments. We can live 1 more Dragon Rage, but now we can't, so we swap into Aqua, who hits an Aurora Beam. Aurora Beam is one of those attacks I forget exists until I teach to a Pokemon. We get a crit, and even that doesn't knock it out, but we can knock it out with Quick Attack. Growlithe comes in next, and we have Surf, because I actually taught him a Water-type move now. And then last but not least, Alakazam. Now, this Alakazam is weird. His only attacking move is actually Future Sight, so it can't really hurt us in any other way. So as long as we're careful and we don't leave Gyarados in on the Future Sight attack, really it's not an issue. We swap into Azul to take the attack, and we survive with over half HP. Good job, Azul. We use a couple Leers just to reduce its defense, because oddly enough, Alakazam has been tanking bites pretty easily from Tsunami. We then go into Sushi. We go for Bite, but we're asleep. But it doesn't matter because the next bite is a crit and knocks it out. Easy. Next, this nice man gives me a Lapras. You know what? 10 out of 10. Best gift I've ever received. I love myself a cute little water dinosaur thing, whatever Lapras is. I then nicknamed him Nessie. And then we have the Giovanni fight, where apparently him and the president of the corporation are in a very important discussion. We fight him, and it goes largely the same as the last fight. He leads with Nidorino, I lead with Sushi. Surprisingly enough, Nidorino actually tanks the Surf with just under half HP, but a second one is able to take it down pretty easily. We're close to the level cap, so we gotta be a little worried, but it's not that bad. In comes Nidoqueen, we go for Ice Beam, and it does just over half, but we get a clutch freeze. I feel like that's so rare for me to see nowadays. A second Ice Beam brings it just into the red HP, but it only goes for Tail Whip. One last Ice Beam can take it down. Like I said, the Gen 1 AI, or the Gen 3 AI, technically isn't that great. Really, all they know how to do well is spam double team, because that's like in every battle. In comes Kangaskhan, we go for an Ice Beam, but surprisingly enough, Kangaskhan has good defense, and while we got the freeze, it unthaws within one turn, so say what you will, it is what it is. Another Ice Beam brings it below half, as Kangaskhan just keeps hitting with Rage, which is honestly just kind of tickling us. Another Ice Beam brings it to the red, it goes for Tail Whip, and one last Ice Beam knocks it out. Alright, that's only one Pokemon left for Giovanni, and it's a Rhyhorn. Rhyhorn's pretty easy, it's weak to the entire team, so really there's nothing to worry about here. We go into Aqua to make it seem like Aqua's included. You know, we want to make him feel included, not left out, so we're just being nice here. And she gets a crit! Look at that! So, second Giovanni fight, arguably as easy as the first one. Up next is the 6th gym leader, the Psychic-type user Sabrina. I was a little concerned about this battle just because of the fact that her Alakazam is very strong, has high special attack, and is honestly surprisingly tanky. But we set up with Blue to set up the Rain Dance, then Sushi knocks out Kadabra with one Surf, thanks to the rain. So far so good. After Kadabra comes in Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime survives Surf with just a sliver and then sets up Reflect. Sabrina then of course heals, and then Bite is able to take it out with a crit. Okay, that's 2 down. Next up is Venomoth. For some reason it's oddly tanky for most runs that I've watched, but it's not that bad here. Here I decided to set up the rain again, but I wanted to set up Hypnosis so Poliwhirl didn't get knocked out, but we kept missing and getting confused, so I just hopped back into Sushi. We KO'd with Ice Beam, and it's pretty much easy. It's pretty GG for that. Alakazam hits hard with the Psychic. We go for Ice Beam. Doesn't really do all that much, so we use Dig. Alakazam goes for Future Sight. We hit it too low, but Sabrina's going to heal, so we go into Tsunami. After that, Alakazam uses Calm Mind, which was a little worrying, but Tsunami is a beast that knocks it out with one return that wasn't even a crit. Good job, Tsunami. That's my 6th gym badge. I'm beginning to feel like a broken record, but we caught a Seal, another Pokemon that, you guessed it, I've never really used. I've always wanted to use Dugong just because I like the concept of it, but I've always preferred Pokemon like Lapras for water and ice. But hey, maybe this time it'll be different. We name it Scald. If you know, you know. We then give Blue a concussion by throwing a Water Stone at it, causing it to evolve into Poliwrath. I decided to wait until Blue learned Belly Drum to evolve it, as it will come in handy when we fight Lorelei. Then we get our final encounter. We get Ammonite, Lord Helix himself. I meant to name him Lord Helix, but I had a little typo and ended up accidentally naming him Lord Herix. Please have mercy on me. Up next is the 7th gym leader Blaine, the Fire-type user. Now, you might be thinking he was a really easy sweep for this team, but was he really? Yeah, nah, he was probably about as easy as Brock was at the beginning. I mean, let's be real, people, I'm literally using a team of Water-type Pokemon, and he only uses Fire-types. We literally drowned his first 2 Pokemon with absolutely no issue. He sends in Rapidash, which is honestly a pretty underrated Pokemon. He burns me, or he doesn't burn me, he uses Fire Spin. For some reason I always feel like Fire Spin sets up a burn, but I am probably confusing that with Will-O-Wisp. We drown the Rapidash, and then in comes Arcanine. Arcanine lowers our attack with Intimidate, and outspeeds us, but really it's not that bad. We hit a Surf in retaliation, and surprise surprise, we knock it out. Good job. We then meet up with Bill again, who takes us to see some islands, and honestly nothing interesting happens here. It's just some boring filler, so I'm gonna skip over it. You guys understand, hopefully. We then battle the 8th and final gym leader, Giovanni, the Ground-type user. And you guessed it, it's just about as easy as Blaine. We lead with Nessie, and he leads with Rhyhorn. Nessie gets a really nice crit, which one-shots the Rhyhorn, but if we're being honest, I don't really think the crit mattered. In comes his second Rhyhorn, we one-shot it with Surf, and we basically drown all of his Pokemon in a Tsunami. I mean, what else could have happened? In comes a Nidoqueen. Now, Nidoqueen is one of those Pokemon that I don't really use all that much, but I've always liked her. But I've always preferred Nidoking just because it has a cooler design. But both are pretty good. Both have Poison Point as one of their abilities, so I like it a lot. Nidoking surprisingly outspeeds with Earthquake, but that pretty much just tickles us, and we retaliate with a one-shot Ice Beam. So far, so good. This final Pokemon is Dugtrio, and you guessed it. Oh, it actually outspeeds. See? You gotta keep you on your toes. Then we drown it with Surf. Good job, Nessie. I'm proud of you. You're a worthwhile Pokemon. Up next is technically the final rival battle, because when you battle him the last time, he's the champion, so this is technically the last battle, or rival battle. Pidgeot outspeeds, but we one-shot with Ice Beam. Again, I really didn't expect anything less. Rhyhorn comes in, we one-shot with Surf. It was a critical hit, but I don't really think it mattered all that much, if we're being honest. Venusaur comes in, goes for Growth, we hit Ice Beam. Hits to over half, uses Razor Leaf, and if it crit, we would have died, but that didn't happen. Venusaur then goes down, and then in comes Gyarados. I leave Nessie in to take the Intimidate, just because, I mean, Intimidate doesn't do anything to special attackers, so there's really no harm there. We go for Ice Beam, then we swap into Tsunami, which then intimidates the enemy Gyarados. He goes for Hydro Pump, that literally just tickles us, and then we knock it out with Return. So far, so good. Growlithe then comes in, and we destroy it with an Earthquake. Again, we don't have we don't have a Water-type move for Gyarados because I could teach him Surf, but he doesn't have good special attack, and I can't get access to Waterfall until after the game is done, or after the Elite Four, so it is what it is, chat. It's all good. Up next is the moment we've all been waiting for, the Elite Four. We start with Lorelei, the Ice-type trainer. It might seem tricky for our Water types, but we have Blue, who sets up and maxes his attack with Belly Drum. We then get a one-shot with Brick Break, and this is pretty much the entire fight, except for Slowbro. We use Body Slam, and it might seem like a bad situation here, but this Slowbro actually doesn't know a single Psychic-type move, so really there's nothing you can do to us. We one-shot Cloyster again, then in comes Jinx, who misses a lovely kiss. Pretty clutch, but I wouldn't be that worried about it. Finally, Lapras comes in, and also goes down to a single Brick Break. Good job, Blue. Earning your keep. If you thought Lorelei was easy, wait till you meet Bruno. We don't talk about him much, and honestly for good reason as well. It's always baffled me that, for being the fighting type user of the Elite Four, he doesn't have a Primeape, and instead he has 2 Onix? I don't know, it just always never really made sense to me, you know? But that being said, Blue knocks out both Onix pretty easily. Body Slam doesn't do much damage to Hitmonchan, and then we swap to Sushi. He goes for counter, but doesn't do anything, and Sushi gets a crit on Surf. I don't think the crit mattered all that much, but that's just me. Hitmonlee is next. We go for Surf, which does half damage. It's also worth noting that I got the Mystic Water from the game counter for Sushi before challenging the Elite Four, so we're doing buff to damage with our Surf. We do almost half damage to Machamp. Then we get our speed lowered with Cross Shot, but a second Surf is able to knock it out. Up next was the member of the Elite Four that I was arguably the most worried about, Agatha. Now the thing about Agatha is that she has 2 Gengars that are very fast. The first one likes to spam double team because, again, the only good thing Gen 3 AI knows how to do is evasion strats. Thankfully though, Nessie takes it out with 2 Psychics. Again, Lapras is very underrated in her learn set. We then also one-shot Golbat with 1 Ice Beam. So far so good. Arbok comes in, we go to Tsunami. Tsunami intimidates it, and then takes it out with a single Earthquake. Again, Gyarados is a monster, and without him, this run would probably not be possible. Gengar comes in, we bait out the Hypnosis, and then we swap back into Nessie. He gets hit by a somewhat decent Sludge Bomb, and then gets the Poison. We go for Psychic, does good damage, gets healed up by the Citrus Berry, and we swap back into Sushi. He takes a Sludge Bomb, 2 Sludge Bombs actually, and then also gets poisoned. Then we knock it out with Surf. The last Pokemon is Haunter, and really it's not that bad. It always goes for Mean Look first. I know this based off other playthroughs. And we knock it out with 2 bites. The final member of the Elite Four is Lance, the Dragon user. You know, technically the only type all of his Pokemon have in common, minus Dragonair, is Flying, so wouldn't he technically be the Flying type member of the Elite Four? Anyway, both our Gyarados intimidate each other, and well, ours is still better. Like, I hate to break it to you, ours is still better. It's also worth noting that before I went to the Elite Four, I leveled up all my Pokemon to the level cap of 60 to match Lance's Dragonite. Again, the level cap only is in effect until the start of each battle, so I can level up past the cap as long as I'm in the middle of a gym battle, or in this case, the Elite Four. Dragonair comes in and surprisingly lives an Ice Beam, then hits us with a Thunder Wave, but we hit through Paralysis and we knock it out pretty easily. We think about switching, which we don't do. Then Gyarados comes back out, hit with Ice Beam, knock it out, and then Dragonite comes in. And I'm wondering how I want to do this, but I decided to swap over to Nessie. Nessie would give the best chance of winning because we resist Dragon types moves, and that was right. We one-shot with Ice Beam. Finally, Dragonair comes out. We can tank another Dragon Rage, but we don't even need to because we one-shot with Ice Beam. Good job, Nessie. Up next is the final fight against Blue. Who could have seen that coming? Certainly not me. We leave the Tsunami to get the Intimidate, and we set Dragon Dances. I know setting up Dragon Dance might seem like a cheap strategy, but this is my first actual Nuzlocke and I want to win, so why not go for it? We hit to half and then we start sweeping with Return. Pidgeot goes down in one return, surprise surprise, then in comes Rhydon, who falls to a single Earthquake. Who could have seen that coming? Certainly not me. Alakazam's next, and also goes down to a crit Earthquake, but I don't think the crit mattered. Gyarados comes in and lowers our attack, but it doesn't matter. We knocked it out with 2 returns, but you thought I was going to say 1. Nope, keeping you on your toes. Arcanine comes in, and I forget that it has extreme speed, and Gyarados goes down. Damn, it was kind of rough. I love Gyarados, dude. Arcanine goes for another extreme speed, but almost gets drowned in one shot by Vaporeon. Then we go for Aurora Beam, and I don't want any Pokemon to get sacked to Solar Beam, so I'm sorry, Vaporeon, but gotta sacrifice you. Damn, that's honestly really rough. But Nessie, angry, comes in and destroys Venusaur with one final Ice Beam for the win. After Venusaur goes down, Nessie finishes her revenge arc with a single Surf against Arcanine. Just kidding, it's multiple Surfs because, you know, they gotta stall the inevitable. We get a crit, didn't matter all too much, but we win, and Nessie completes her revenge arc. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I had a blast doing this run. This is my first actual Nuzlocke that I actually completed, and I really enjoyed it, and I want to do more Nuzlocks, honestly. By the time you see this, I'll probably have started a new one, so you can look forward to that video. Thank you guys again so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. Stay healthy.